untitled.chapter@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. We're going live on YouTube right now. I'm trying to do a little more often than not, but again, this is an audio podcast that just happens to have video of people talking to each other in a room. So if that excites you to watch that, then check out our YouTube channel because we do that there. AlmostAgreement.com. I've got my jobs description sheet working. It's not done yet, but you can get on there and check out what I do have. If you have any corrections for me, please email them to me at almostagreement@gmail.com. I have Dominique Oakley today. She's running for District 7 in the school board. I didn't get to watch Mr. Lee last night, so we can't go over too much of that yet. But I do intend on getting to that at some point in the near future. Sheriff Jimmy was scheduled yesterday. He had to cancel. We're rescheduling him. And I've got 5 more this week moving forward. So we're almost in agreement. We're going to have a show and we're going to learn about Miss Oakley and District 7 school board races. Hello, Dominique. How are you today?
I am wonderful, Seth. How are you?
Oh, it's a day. I'm so like these are the days of the weather-wise that just drive me crazy because walking out the door at 25 degrees and then 2 hours later it's 60.
Right, and it looks so nice, and then the cold hits you.
Right.
Yeah.
You just want to sit out there in the sun, but then the wind blows, and then it doesn't feel so fun in the sun anymore.
Yes.
All right, so enough of the weather. We got the weather up to date for everybody. Mm-hmm. Let's get down to school board races and stuff like that. So let's. I always like to with new people that I haven't had on the show before. I always like to do the brief history of how you got from being born 35, 40 years ago, whatever, to sitting in the chair across from me asking for our vote for a particular seat in office.
Well, I'm not going to hide my age because my birthday party was on Sunday, and I had lots of people there. So it's 41, as was very obvious on my cake since they put the numbers right there on the front.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, and we had 50-plus people there and a restaurant full in addition to that all got to see exactly how it went. So we're going to go with that.
All right, so it's public info at this point.
It is public info. I am not one of those women. It's public info. So, yeah, so in the 41 years, let's see, I was born at UT Hospital. Super exciting. I am a full-on Orange Vol. Born there and all that. And then my family is from here originally and forever. It goes all the way back to the people that hid in the hills, before all the rest of us got here. So yeah, I've kind of always been a native. I'm a 4th generation educator.
Always been over in District 7, or has it been all over the county?
All over. So my parents divorced when I was young, and my mom moved to Gatlinburg, and my dad lived in Cedar Bluff before Cedar Bluff had anything on it.
Right.
Back in the way back days when there were cows out there. And so I've always had one foot in Gatlinburg and one foot in West Knoxville. And then my grandmother taught at Fulton High School for many years. And I was the oldest grandbaby, and my parents were both super hippies. So I spent a lot of time with her when my school sessions were out. And so I did a lot of growing up at Fulton as well. And then I went to Maryville College. So
you're a Scot then, right?
I am a Scot.
Have they always been Scots?
They have always been Scots, and funny enough, Gatlinburg Pittman is a Highlander, so I have pretty much always been a tartan wearer. That's just how it goes. I like my tams and my skirts.
Fair enough, and then the dudes wear skirts too, and it's fun that way.
They do. We all wear skirts. It's great. Yeah, and then after that, I ran off to the big city because had to do that. Had to be the rebel. And all my family, like I said, 4th generation educator. Literally 3 of my 4 great-grandparents were all educators that were alive when I was a kid. And then both of my grandparents. So you just come by it naturally.
Okay.
And ended up teaching in Atlanta for about a decade. And then had small people. And my small people, I've said twin boys. And one of them is very special needs. And realized I needed more family than I had in Atlanta, and so we moved back here. And when I moved back here, I moved into Sequoia's district because it was the best ranked school in the city, and I wanted my kids in the best school, and quickly discovered that my kids wouldn't get their needs met at Sequoia, and they were going to bus them all the way out to Carnes. And so in an attempt to save my dear sweet little boy a 2-hour bus ride every day, I moved out to Carnes for a while, and then did a little bit of time in North Knoxville too, because I missed being downtown. I missed the urban environment. So lived for a little while in North Knox in India Kincannon's old school board district. And then my dear sweet husband talked me into moving onto a farm in District 7.
I mean, it's got to be District 7 then, because that's the only place there's enough room for a farm anymore.
Right? Yes, yes.
Because we were looking at district maps over the weekend talking about some of the redistricting that's going on statewide and some of these house maps, and it's like district, I guess that's, 19 up there? It's massive.
It is.
And we've got there's 4 districts all squeezed into inside 640, and then half of Knox County is its own district just because it's what's left of what's spread out in Knox County. Okay, so there's a life history. What gets you out of teaching and into politics?
Well, I had started a small business that ran in the summers and on the weekends, just like all good teachers do, because we don't make enough money as teachers. And it started to make me way too much money, which, is not a problem for most people.
First world problems.
Right, exactly. First world problems. Yeah, very much a first world problem. At which point I took a break from teaching to make the business go, because it was actually, paying all my bills at that point. And at the time, Madeline Rajero was looking for somebody to serve on her Small Business Advisory Council, and she needed more women and more people from non-traditional backgrounds. And so I ended up kind of taking a seat on that board. First time I'd ever had anything to do with politics, had no interest in it until a lovely lady by the name of Patricia Robledo came over and begged me and said, please do this. And I was like, you know what? I'll do that. And in the process of doing that, got to know that everything I thought I knew about government, I'd even been a social studies teacher, but everything I thought I knew about local politics and civics was totally different than the reality of what I was encountering, and have kind of never really gotten out of it.
See, that's one of the things to me as we've gotten further into the show about how much I don't know.
Yes.
Especially on the local level, through school and basic civics, whatever, you got a good general idea of the 3 branches of the federal government and that kind of thing. But in a commission style government here locally with 2 mayors, and then we have a municipality inside that, and the overlaps and all the complications that are our local government that we are here in, I didn't know any of it. I still don't know a lot of it. And that's kind of the running joke of the show, is that this is just me falling face first into trying to figure this thing out.
And as soon as you figure it out, it changes.
Right.
We've only had 2 mayors for a decade. We changed the title for the county mayor to mayor not that long ago. I literally moved
county
away.
Executive or whatever.
Yeah, we had
before,
county executive before, and I moved back, and they're asking me to vote for mayor, and I'm going, wait, what? Huh? I just did that. Seriously? And
right.
They had to explain
and especially,
we had 2 now.
I can't remember. I think it was Ash that went finger annex crazy, and we have these crazy city lines. I'm right here. I make this joke all the time. I'm a county resident by a fence line.
Yes.
And then by 3 houses that way. But then my good friend's house that's, I don't know, half a mile further west of me is in the city.
Yeah. So in my case, I am the last house in high school, the illustrious town that is not a town of high school, because that's where the post office do the line. But I am 40 feet from being Knoxville,
right,
as far as a postal code, and not Powell. But then if you go a different direction off of my property line, I'm 1,000 feet from being Powell.
Right.
And then I'm still only literally one street, one ridge line from being in Anderson County.
Right. Yeah, because my business is up off of Emory up there, and Emory itself is city, but none of the neighborhoods that are off of Emory are city property.
Well, and that's the thing. I'm 4 minutes from Emory Road. I'm 10 minutes from downtown.
Right.
And yet I'm nearly a different county, and I'm, this city that nobody's ever heard of high school. So yeah, it's interesting. The way the lines are drawn is really, and then if you start looking at school zones,
right,
school zones get even wackier. I've got constituents in District 7 that have a kid that goes to, this elementary school A, and then goes to elementary school or middle school B, and high school C, and that's where they're zoned for, and they're all in 3 different districts.
Yeah, well, that's how, we kind of like that here. We're in. We're obviously in Rocky Hill because we're right there, but then all of Rocky Hill goes to Bearden Middle.
Right.
Half of Rocky Hill goes to West. The other half goes to Bearden High. Right. And so, most of my kids' current best friends are on the other side of Westland, and so they're all Bearden. Mm-hmm. But somehow we're closer physically to Bearden, but we go to West at this house.
And that's super bizarre.
Right. And we'll see how that pans out by the time we get there. Luckily, my parents live in in Bearden District, and if I really, really want to push it, I
Right.
can make some stuff happen. But it's still.
Well,
I don't
and your kids are young enough that things may change.
Right.
With the new middle school coming, and undoubtedly we're going to have a new high school at some point, or at least some redistricting because of that.
Right.
Growth is happening in some interesting places. District 7 being one of them. County Commission just in the last 2 years put in thousands more houses north of Emory Road.
Right.
Thousands. We have no infrastructure. We couldn't even use
And I
virtual
can't-
school.
I can't
because of
even
that.
figure out. I get it. I've been to 407. I've seen the way that exit now works, and I understand it. But I cannot believe that's the plan right there on Emory.
The Diverging Diamond plan, I am excited at the idea because the traffic there, we are the second busiest intersection in the county these days, second only to right here in your backyard at the West Town Mall.
Right.
But that being said, it is such a nightmare every day. I mean, I am the Diverging Diamond thing on the other side, fine, whatever. But that construction period is going to be a nightmare.
awful.
A nightmare.
It's going to be super awful. And I'd say I as usual have the correct solution, but I wasn't loud enough at the time to get it out there, so we'll leave that alone. Okay, so that was the dabble into politics, and so the specific jump to the specific seat. Obviously the education background comes into a good part of that, but why this seat? Why now?
So the specific jump, when COVID happened, I have a set of twin boys, as I told you before. They are now 13, just recently in December. And so they were fifth graders when COVID started, and they got sent home. We had actually just gone on their fifth grade trip to Biztown that the kids do, the Biztown field trip for the little city that they have up there at Junior Achievement, which is awesome, up in Clinton. And we had done that the day before, and then they called school out, for the long spring break that never
Right.
unsprung.
Yeah, because I remember we were at we went down to Wilderness
Yeah.
for the first couple of days of spring break, and that's when everything started breaking down. And we're like, I don't know, whatever. We're going swimming. Leave me alone.
It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, no, we had just done that field trip, and a bunch of the kids had not, like two of the chaperones and like a bunch of the kids had not shown up because they didn't feel well, and it was of course just the flu at the time. But we had done the field trip and we came home, and here I am on the bus, with my little special needs guy. And we get back to the house and we start talking about government, with my sons. And because they've been to Biztown, they've gotten to one of them got to pretend he was the postmaster. That was my little special needs guy. And the other one was working in one of the stores, and he got to go meet with the mayor at one point during the day. And he was the mayor of Biztown. And I was actually working in the mayor's office, like helping out in the mayor's office, which was kind of fun. And so he was very, they were really into it. So we started talking about it, and then COVID happens. And they get sent home with no curriculum. And here I am, a curriculum specialist. My specialty is working with special needs children and testing them and figuring out exactly how to build the perfect program for them specifically. Okay, that's what I do. That is my training. And so here they get sent home with nothing to do. And I am a school teacher. That means I am not going to let my children just sit home and know nothing. I'm like, all right, no problem. I know what to do. I can test you. I will figure this out. And I do. Okay. Now my son, my neurotypical, and I'm using big air quotes here because neurotypical is such a weird word.
Right.
There's nothing normal or typical about any child ever. If you have kids, you know this. If you've been a child, you suspect this. But the reality is he comes home and he was an AB student. Good kid. Honor roll more often than not, had attended school, loved school, liked to play school when he was home in the evenings. Of course, mom's a teacher, so that's not a big surprise. But I test him. He's a fifth grader, which means, and he's in the middle of his fifth grade year, he should score on his ability scores like a 5.5.
Right.
Okay. If this were the Olympics, that's what he should get. Well, his math score was a 2.4. And this is the same standardized testing that is based on the national standards that the Tennessee standards are all designed around.
Right.
His reading score is a 3.2.
So this was during the lockdowns.
This is during lockdown.
Okay.
That puts him at 3 grade levels behind in math and 2 grade levels behind in reading.
Mm-hmm.
And he's receiving all A's and B's.
Right.
And I was shocked and appalled and disgusted and said, that's it. You've obviously not been paying attention. Da 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 da. And then I sit down and start emailing with his teachers, and his teacher's like, no, that's really where he is. I'm like, but he's an A-B student in 5th grade. Shouldn't he be a 5.5? And they're like, well, we make allowances. And I'm like, that's not okay.
Right.
So I then designed a curriculum for my sons that actually caught him up. And in fact, he is now, should be a 7.5 in 7th grade. And he really honestly is. He didn't really get a summer break. he did school 5 hours a day, every day, pretty much during lockdown.
So just to put the blanket terms on this, the running for this office is a giant apology to one of your kids. That other kids don't have to go through the suffering that he did for the situation.
Well, that was the thing. Part of it is during this, I asked him what he was interested in during social studies. And he was interested in what was going on the news because, of course, he was seeing what was going on in the news with COVID. And so we started talking about the basics of government. And I decided at that point, hey, I'm not going to let you grow up the way I did, which is having no understanding of local government. And so we started reading every day, lots of different newspapers and lots of different websites and all that kind of stuff, looking and doing media comparisons. Of course, it's a great way to teach literature as well. So we start doing all this. And one of the ones that he falls in love with is The Compass. I don't know. I'm assuming you read Jesse May Shark. The Compass does a pretty decent job.
I read Scott too. If we want to be all, if we want to throw names around.
That's true. I should not forget Scott because Scott does do a lot of the political stuff. Jesse happens to be the education person, so I usually deal with Jesse's articles more often. But so anyway, the long and short of it is, we start reading The Compass. He starts getting really interested, and at that point, he starts wanting to get involved and make a difference because one of his teachers gets sick and is very, very sick, likely to die. And he's terrified. My son is terrified. He's going to lose someone he cares about. And so we start getting involved. We start making masks. We get involved with the Knox Makes Masks group. I ended up handling their logistics. It was a ton of fun. It was also really, really stressful because we realized how needy our community was at that point. And he got really invested in that. And, here's my, at this point, 11-year-old son crying about it. So we're working through all this. Eventually, by the end of the by the time that they're starting to get ready to go back to school, my heavily autistic son goes back to in-person school. They've been vaccinated, their choice, because they are old enough to. Well, the one is old enough to intelligently make the choice. The other one does what his brother does most of the time, and then. So Nathan, when it was time to make the decision, he decided he wanted to stay virtual. And so he continued to monitor every morning. He still gets up and he monitors his news sources. And last fall, he was reading The Compass and he read the article that said that, Patty Bounds had decided she was no longer going to run. She is currently the seat holder in District 7 for school board. She was a 30-year teacher at Bricky McLeod Elementary and then has done 2 terms on the school board. And then she's filled her public civic duties and she's not running again. And he read the write-up that Jesse had about the other 2 candidates. And his response was, Mom, shouldn't teachers be on school board? And I said, well, yeah, buddy, sure. And his grandmother actually served on the school board in Georgia. And he goes, I talked to my Go-Go. And I said, yeah. And he goes, Go-Go says teachers need to be on the school board, Mom, for serious. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, you're a teacher. You need to be on the school board. And I was like, well, I don't want to do this. I'm all for being active in politics, but I'm not a politician. He goes, well, it's time. I need you to do this. And this is important. And that's the kind of conversation we often have when I tell him he needs to do something like, take out his laundry or help with the trash, that I need you to do this. This is important, not, just to throw it to the side. And he got me with that one. Right. It was a done deal. So if you want to ask how I ended up here
begrudgingly from a child using your tactics against you.
Yes.
Check.
So between my son using my tactics against me and Jesse May Shark's writing, it's their fault, really.
Okay. I will make mention to Jesse next time I talk to him about it. That
he is aware. I have told him that I have outed him at least to himself. So now he knows it's his fault.
It's his fault.
So.
Well, I'm sure there's worse things that he could take blame for than this one. Okay, so like we get into school board stuff, and as best as I can grasp an understanding of it, I don't know what our top to-dos? How do we fix some of the problems we're having? And what's step one after you take a seat?
Step one, in all seriousness, is better communication. Because currently, right now, parents in Knox County do not trust our school board. We get these emails on the weekends, on Friday evenings. They like to send them when there's no way for us to respond to them. And we get these emails that say whatever they might say this week. And the inevitable response is you go on the internet, you go on Facebook, and you have 10 different teachers and 400 different parents that are all responding to said email with, this is a lie, and this is a lie, and this is a lie, and this is a lie. Now, different people pick out different parts to label as lies or half-truths, but it happens pretty much every email. And it's been happening that way since the pandemic started. If you go back and look before the pandemic, the communication was even worse then. They would call out school after buses had already rolled in the mornings because they just wouldn't even tell us what was going on.
Right. One of my general complaints, and it's a little bit less specific than this one, is I hate, and I can't even imagine once we get at the minor third and fifth this year, so next year when I have them in different schools, but my ability to communicate with teachers in general.
Oh, it's atrocious. It's absolutely atrocious.
Depending on the year, I've got different apps that they prefer,
Yes.
and this and that and the other, and it's just like, it just gets to be where it's like I don't even really try to talk to them anymore. I
hate to tell you, Seth, it gets worse in middle school. So
I
middle
guessed,
school,
but
I get 6 different conversations via 6 different apps, and then I have the one that wants to call me every time.
Right.
And I'm on the phone with the one that wants to call me while the other 4 are sending me texts and emails and whatever thing I have to log into for. And that's for one kid.
Right.
Never mind the other one. It gets nuts. I can't imagine some of these families that have 4 and 5 children, and sometimes at 3 different schools, maybe even 4 different schools.
Right.
You're running all over the county, and you've got communication coming in from 600 different means, and it's half the time it's mixed messages. Sometimes you get multiple teachers telling you the same thing.
Right.
But then you might get a message from the principal that says something completely different. I've gotten, throughout the course of the pandemic, personally, more than one email from a parent or a parent's group or a teacher specifically that said, hey, I've gotten sick with COVID. This is the situation going on. And no email from the principal telling me that there was a COVID exposure in the school.
Right.
None that whole week. That doesn't make sense. And then we've gotten the
That doesn't make
inverse.
sense to me at all because I get like 3 a week no matter what.
Right. Well, that's been the really weird thing. I haven't gotten one from my middle schooler. We've gotten 2 maybe since we've come back this year total. And that doesn't make any sense when we're canceling school for how bad COVID is. And
right.
I know if he has his teachers there or not. If his teachers are absent, then I should at least, know something.
Right.
We've got to have some conversation, but there's none. And that's just the reality, is that the amount of communication has been atrocious, which has broken down the trust that parents and the community have in the school board and in the school system. And we have got to rebuild that. That has to be step 1, is better, consistent, across the board communication. The second step for that then allows us to build that trust and start building better relationships where we can then have these bridges into the community where parents can again become involved in the schools. I'm getting lots of parents since I started running telling me that they're not allowed to be involved in any way, shape, or form besides writing a paycheck to the school. It's, hey, we're not going to do fundraisers because kids can't go knock on doors, so send me a check. Or we're going to have this event, but you're not allowed to come to it, so send me a check. That's not how parenting in schools work. It's a public school for a reason. You're more than just a paycheck for that school. So we need to allow parents to get back in the classroom and involved with children when it's safe, of course. There's always going to be health concerns and safety concerns. There are some parents we probably don't want in the schools because, serial killers have kids too. But we've got to start getting parents more involved, and we've got to start getting our communities more involved in our schools. We've done a whole lot in the last, since I was a kid, essentially, in the last 20 some years, to lock the communities and the schools down for safety reasons. Valid, Columbine happened when I was in college.
I was here. I was at Bearden when that happened.
Yeah. And I understand why public school is, again, different, but the reality of it is at this point we've got our kids terrified with these school shooter drills and of germs that they can't see. They're afraid, And then now their parents aren't allowed to be there, so their parents are upset. School has become a stressful experience for these children. We've got to change that. And the only way that's going to happen is if we can build trust and build a better community for our actual school environments.
All right. That makes sense to me, because and this reads into a mountain of politics that's going on right now, and some of the stuff I'm pretty sure came out last night with Governor Lee's thing, but like I said, I hadn't watched it yet. What is it? Student first. What is the phrase that they're using?
Student first funding.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I mean, everybody knows is code for some sort of voucher style system, which I'm open to the conversation. This gets me in a lot of trouble, but I think there's a lot of people that are speaking on how schools currently work and how vouchers would work in those schools that don't know some of the funding ways that schools actually work.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, if you take your kid out of school, that school loses money. It doesn't matter if you go somewhere else or not.
Right.
And so the flat argument of vouchers defunds public schools is not untrue, but it's not true either. And it's one of those that people like to soapbox on, and it's like, okay, but let's back up and I could take my kids out and homeschool them. That school still loses money.
Yes, there's lots of ways we defund our public schools.
Right, and so that's one of those things to be. But as this just trust conversation and accessibility from parents issues that we've been having, especially over the last couple of years, and parents wanting back in, I feel like it makes it a little bit easier of sell for Governor Lee's programs that he's talking about when the dysfunction's clear.
Yes.
We all see the dysfunction's clear, and this is a potential way out. Agree or disagree with it being the correct way out, that's not the point of it. And it concerns me that this is a greater political game that's being played.
Right.
And it's being played with my kids.
Yes.
And so, I don't know, it's an interesting spot to be in, because like I'm thinking about you as you're talking about this, and I'm thinking about the timing of all these things going on, and it's going to be, if any of this stuff really starts happening, some of it might start this session in the state, but probably most of it will be next session.
Yes.
Because I think most elected bodies are going to use this election as permission to move towards some of these things. And so everybody that's in election this year is going to start running on that conversation. And, a bunch of people are going to get elected that have that as part of their platform. And they're going to say, well, then that means I have to do it. And so this time next year, so first session of the 113th or whatever it is, might be when some of this stuff takes place. And how, as a local school board, we fight back on those kind of things if that's not what we want. And I try to put that kind of delicately, because, again, I'm open to conversation. I want to figure out what is a better way, or is this the best way, or is this the way we've always done it? Because that's all, I've had a bunch of the current school board people in and talked about it, because that's always one of those things to me that the further I get into it, the more I see that this is the rut of history.
Yes.
In the way we do stuff. This is just how we've done it. And so to look outside the box, or whatever cliche we want to throw out, to look outside the box is just, well, we don't do that. So we're just going to keep pounding forward with what we're doing.
Well, the problem with education, as far as the outside the box and the history that we've done, we need to stop and think. We put the education system together really in the 1950s. That's when it was what we see, the majority of our classrooms here in Knoxville, that's when they were built. That's when this system that we are maintaining.
Right. It's based on it's the Austrian education system, right?
And we are bandaging a 1950s principle that was built around
worker bees.
Building children to go to work in factories.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that.
Keep in mind, most of these jobs that they would have had in factories have long since been replaced by robots. So we're building our
Mexicans or Chinese people that are on the other side of the world. Right.
And I don't know about you, but my kid is nothing like a robot.
He would like to be a robot. Mine would.
Oh, one of mine would. One of mine would be very happy. The other one behaves about as well as a really well-designed, not listening robot.
But the problem with this, the problem with this part of the conversation to me is that is outside of school board control. How much can the school board really do on change? Because to me that becomes
we can change a lot.
The broader curriculum of the classroom, which the school board doesn't have a ton of access to.
Well,
other than banning bad comic books or whatever.
Right. Curriculum is set by the state, but how you teach it is the difference. Okay, that's. We used to do everyone in one classroom, everyone at one time. 1950s small class, small schools situation. And then we said, oh, wait, maybe these kids learn a little bit better if we start later. It'll be better if we have buses running a little later. And in fact, a lot of parents are even bringing up the conversation now of if we stagger even greater the elementary, middle, and high, we'd have even more advantages. And I mean, I have worked in a system in the Georgia area that did have a much more staggered start schedule for the between.
And we're going to have to do it for bus drivers at this point.
Yeah, that's the reality. At this point, we don't even currently have bus drivers as an in-house. They're a contract worker. We have no control over what goes on with the bus drivers in Knox County. And that's something that we could take back as the school board. The school board does have that kind of power and authority, but we would have no way to hire enough right now unless we staggered the schedule. That's why the contract, exists with the bus drivers to begin with, is because we couldn't get enough when we did do that as the school board. And that's the thing. The school board has a lot more authority and could change things, how we do things here in Knox County, a lot more. If you look at different school systems across the country, there are individual systems within a state that follow the state mandates, do all of the state required things, but they do it their way. And it works for them in their district. That's what we need to do. We need to step back and go, wait, we are Knox County. We are not Chattanooga. We are not Nashville. We are not Memphis. We are not Boston. We need to do things our way, and we need to figure out what our way is. We still have to meet those same curriculum guidelines.
But most of them are timed, right? Like, because it's like third grade, like TCAPs and all that kind of stuff is on a particular time scale.
The testing is on a particular time scale. That we can't change. We also can't change the minimum number of days or the minimum number of hours that children serve. Those are things we cannot change.
Serve, what a terrible word.
Right? It's literally a matter of a butt in a chair. I mean, it's so horrible. I know, I don't know about you, but I mean, since you have a small business, if you had an employee that you simply paid to be a butt in a chair, nothing based on their performance, would you be okay with that?
Retail's a little bit funky. You got to deal with some dead time, but I get the premise of what you're after.
Right? If their performance was absolutely hideous and you still had to pay them, you would not be okay with that. And yet with schools, as long as they serve their time, we find a way.
Right.
And that's not okay.
Well, and that's not the real world. That's not reality. You
right.
don't, I mean, maybe there are some jobs out there that you could probably get away with it at, but in the grand scheme of things, just doing the time is not going to get you, continued employment or,
exactly.
Or a raise or all the other different things that you want out of your life
exactly.
by just
and
sitting in the chair.
We are teaching children that it's just sitting in the chair is okay. And that's something that we've got to stop. And that's the reality. Knox County has the opportunity to step back and go, you know what? We're not going to find this acceptable anymore. We want to do this our way. We can do charter programs. We can do, and charter programs not meaning necessarily a charter school, more of like an opportunity to investigate just a new method. Okay?
Right.
And we've done those kind of things. LNN is a great example of that. And LNN has even run some at LNN, but that is an outgrowth of, the magnet school concept is an outgrowth of a charter opportunity. It's essentially charter being a word to say that it's an experiment that we're running within education. We don't like to experiment on children, but sometimes, experimenting on how children learn is an important
I'll experiment on
part of the
children. I don't care. You're not offending me with the idea because I get it because it goes back to that original concern of mine as a parent is this because this is.
Yes.
90%
of what we're doing is because it is.
You're going and you're going to have this book this year and this book this year, and you're going to do a report on this, and you're going to do a diorama on this other thing, and this is this year, and that's all. And to question that idea is to question educators or something like that. It's like, no, I want to know. I'm not comfortable with in general on a wide swath of topics. I'm not comfortable with saying, well, that's how we've done it for the last 50 years.
So to give you an example, one of the standards that we must teach children is poetry. Okay? Poetry. You're familiar with poetry, right? You can probably rattle off 4 or 5 poems.
I rhymed on accident the other day. It was amazing.
There you go. But that's the thing. In all reality, poetry, as it has long historically been taught, we think of, maybe some Shakespeare or some Robert Frost, but we don't necessarily encounter it a lot in day-to-day life. Well, I was teaching inner city Atlanta. And it had always been taught with Robert Frost. You always started with Robert Frost, snow falling on cedars. That's where you ran. And I said, as a very young, not knowing any better whippersnapper to my mentor teacher, I don't want to do that. My kids are not going to get this. Most of my kids, several of my kids had parole officers. Most of my kids were involved in gangs. Many of them didn't have parents. Several of them were drug addicts of various and sundry varieties that had to check out during the day to go get their methadone or whatever and come back. It was a really rough environment.
And it's Atlanta, and snow in the woods doesn't really land well.
Right? It didn't make any sense. And I said, you know what I want to do? I'd like to use rap music to teach poetry.
Right.
And they looked at me like I'd grown 16 different heads, that I was the freakish weird thing in the room. And my principal said, you know what? Nobody's ever failed at doing that. Let's try it. Let's write a curriculum. Let's try it.
Right.
And we had to go all the way to, it met the state requirement, but we had to get the local school board's permission to use the materials, the music, and that kind of stuff that we were going to do. And it reached those kids. And 19 years later, most of those kids have found me on Facebook and thanked me for that.
Right.
Strangely enough, it's never not weird when I log into Facebook and I find another one of my students who has been married to somebody else and has a different name and reaches out and talks about me in a different name because I was that was before I'd ever gotten married.
Right.
And tells me how much I changed their life and they still remember Run DMC because of that. I'm super excited that the Super Bowl is going to have rap in it this year because I'm like, yes, it all ties back around.
So it's the long game that you were working on from many moons ago.
Right. Very good.
Very
good.
Okay. So communication, rebuilding the trust.
Innovation. We've got to innovate for our kids. The world they're in has been innovated since 1950. It is not the same world. And we have got to bring education up to speed.
Right.
And honestly, the board has the potential to do that. We really do. And it doesn't necessarily cost more money.
I mean, everybody's got a computer.
It just takes research and time.
Right.
And that's the problem is we've always done it this way. So we keep doing it because it's easier to keep doing what you've always done. But this is kind of we've broken both of our legs, but we're going to keep trying to walk the same way. That's not going to work. We've got to cast them. We've got to do the work to get those muscles built back up and doing the right thing. And honestly, our legs have been broken in Knox County for so long. We need a lot of help.
Okay. All right. So communication. I mean, I feel like these are probably printed somewhere, like on a website or something.
They are on my website. About that later. You can find them
at communication,
Dominique.com.
Trust building. No, I told you we get the plugs later. Innovation. How many are there? So I can time this.
Honestly, in all reality, my big three it's opportunity, community, and trust. Trust and communication being that big portion of it that I feel like we need to start with, and then community, building that trust and rolling into this, building communities with our schools and with our parents and with our community leaders again. Because that's something we can do. Historically, it is something we have done, just not in the recent future or in the recent past. It's something we need to do in the future. A lot of our kids, we have over 1% of our student body is identified as being homeless. Did you know that?
I did not know that. So 6,000-ish kids
are identified as being homeless in Knox County. And those are the ones that are identified. How many are hiding the fact that they don't have a consistent home every night?
Right.
And that means those kids are coming to school not knowing where they're going to go home to. How are you expecting that kid to learn? Because I know if I went to work in the morning and didn't know where I was going to sleep that night, I would be a very ineffective employee.
Well, because I think that in and of itself is one of those things that I think is an outside the school board potentially conversation needs to be had. Because I make the joke, or like, I don't know, there's the great meme, that cartoon or whatever that was going around for a little while, where it was like the teacher and like the teacher was all tatted up, but it was all the jobs the teacher has with all the tattoos. And it's like, again, I mean, if we're going to use the employee example, it's like I have an employee that does this. Yeah. That's what I hired them to do. I don't expect them to do X, Y, and Z because that's not the job. The job is this thing. And now if part of that job requires that X, Y, and Z get taken care of, it's a matter of figuring out where that lies, and it doesn't automatically lie on that person. And I feel like that's the natural reaction. And I get some of the logistical part of why it makes sense, because for these 6,000-ish students that are identified as homeless, that teacher is going to be one of the few contacts that kid has that may be able to help address that issue, or at least push them in the right direction towards somebody who can better help the issue. And so all this falls on the teacher. Like, I was like, I don't know, like the mindset of this, reminds me, like, I think right now in the State House, they're working on a bill that's going to add domestic abuse identification to the cosmetology exam. So to be a cosmetologist,
you also have to be a social worker.
Right. You are now required as a cosmetologist to be able to identify and assist, or at least help assist an individual that comes in with showing signs of domestic abuse. I'm all for anybody that is suffering from domestic abuse having as much help and as many people as possible helping them in that situation.
But I don't want my hairdresser to have to be worrying about that while they're cutting my hair.
Right. I'm here to cut hair. And my other favorite one, I don't know why I know so much about hairdressers, but my other favorite one is part of the exam to get state licensures to be a cosmetologist is you have to be able to identify lice on an individual. That makes total sense.
Yes.
But you are not allowed, because it is a medical thing, to tell the person that they have lice.
Oh, that's disgusting.
And it's just like
whereas a teacher, I'm required to be able to identify lice and be able to tell the parent of that child that their child has lice, but I can't tell any of the other children in the classroom.
Right, and it's just one of those like weirdisms, and it's like, again, the whole point of bringing those two little weirdisms up is that we're for some reason, because it makes logistical sense,
right,
that these hairdressers are going to have more access to certain individuals than others.
I mean, they're often therapists to begin with,
right? But that's usually
by choice,
a marketed
right.
Yeah. It's a market advantage to be a good therapist while you're cutting hair.
Exactly.
But it's not a requirement, and so I that mindset that we as a public kind of have on this kind of thing is what concerns me about it. And where specifically it's the teacher's the social worker, the teacher is hopefully the educator, but it's also making sure that there's food on the table, that there's a home to go to, and then this and this and this and this. And it's like, same idea as how do we expect a homeless kid to have any time to focus on school? Mm-hmm. How do we expect a teacher to have any time to focus on teaching when they're doing all these other things?
That's why we need these community partners. We have groups in our community to help these children if we have them identified and in these organizations. But we need to bridge the gap between the school that knows this is a problem and the organizations that can fix it. Because there's a lot of that, and we should not be expecting our school to do everything. We have beautiful, wonderful, giving people in our society that want to help and want to be there and pick up these places where an individual's, a single child's life has been risked and help them. But we're not letting them in. We're not cooperating. We're not working back and forth on a lot of this. And thus, children are suffering. And that shouldn't be happening. It would be like the hairdresser only cutting half of your head.
Right. And because they're too busy looking at the bruise on your face.
Right. Right. And then saying, no, you're great. On out the door. And, me personally, I don't know about your political views. I mean, I've heard you talk about them a little bit, but
yes, you do. But go ahead.
In my case, me personally, I don't want to abdicate responsibility for my own life to everybody else. I'm responsible for my choices and I'm responsible for what I do, because if I abdicate my responsibility to somebody else, that means they get to tell me what to do. And I'm just not big on that. I like to do my thing.
Right. And to me, like for my continuation on that thought, because I generally agree with what you're saying, is where, like, I can't imagine a point where I feel comfortable telling somebody else what to do, except for my kids. Like, my kids are like the very short list of people that I'm like, no, you don't do that.
Yeah.
That is a fork and that's a light socket. Those things don't go together. Yeah. I'm willing to tell you that, but it's all fine. Shove a fork in a socket. That's not, I mean, I might say, hey, maybe not, but I'm not going to tell you what to do. That's not my place.
But if my neighbor wants to shove a fork in his light socket, it's not my job to stop him.
Right.
It's his choice. He's over 18. He's made the choice. He lives in his own house. And if he wants to shove forks in all of his light sockets, well, Rocky Hill's going to get exciting, but KUB's going to have a fun week, but that's not actually my place to tell him.
Right. And Rural Metro will make a couple more money. That's a big stink of mine. Sorry. I'm not a big Rural Metro fan. But yes,
I did
and
get
again,
to see the new, they did just in District 7 buy us a new fire truck that was over $1 million fire truck. I now know what $1 million fire truck looks like. I got to see it up close and personal. Yeah. It's pretty.
Did you help pay for it?
I live in District 7, so I'm sure some way, one way or the other, I helped pay for it.
Are you guys members?
My husband handles all of that hilariously. I just realized, I was like, when I lived in the city, I didn't have to worry about that. I was in the city limits up until just a few years ago.
Right. When you're in the city, you that's why you pay property tax twice, is for things like that.
No, he handles all of that.
Yeah.
That's a great question. I should ask that tonight. You learned things today.
Honestly, like this, if to be fair, the history of this show kind of starts with a fight I had with Rural Metro.
Oh.
Well,
I am a big fan of people who give to help others. Okay, public servants in general.
It'd be weird if you didn't
firefighters,
like them because
police
you're trying to
officers.
be one. But
Right.
yeah.
Yes. Firefighters, police officers, teachers, medical professionals, anybody who's in the caring field, I have a soft spot for. It gets weird when they're making money off of it. Because I like to say when I was actively teaching in the classroom, I teach the kids for free. You pay me for the paperwork and the parenting. It's the dealing with the parents and the doing the paperwork for the feds that you have to pay me for. I would, and still to this day, I would work with the kids for free. That's that has nothing to do with it. The children are beautiful.
Well, see,
and helping them, the light bulb come on is the whole reason.
To do the same thing, to continue the thought, I don't mind people making money off it. It's when there's exclusivity deals is where it gets gross.
See that's what I mean by making the money.
That's,
it gets
right.
There's a place there where it's a little gray.
Right, because I'm in general, I lean towards privatization of the many things as possible, because even if it's a profit motive, it depends on. I mean, you still got to sell it.
True.
And
Very true.
if you do crappy work, you stop selling it because nobody wants to buy it anymore.
That's valid.
But if you're not allowed to buy it anywhere else, then it doesn't matter the quality of the work you put together. And that's one of the things, if to speak in euphemisms or whatever right now, that's kind of where we're at with some of these issues. So I think that's the kind of the core of what's going on at the state level, at least for this student first funding model conversation, is that there are a lot of people that are frustrated with what's going on.
Yes.
The product is not good anymore.
It is not good. It is not. As a taxpayer and a teacher, I can honestly say the product is not good. I am not satisfied with what I am getting from my public schools these days. I think we can do 100% better.
Right. And I think that's the target. And I think the hardest thing about that is trying to get everybody on the same page.
Well, I mean,
because the agreement of how to do better is another hard part.
I know you didn't watch Lee's speech last night, but I'll hit a few high points for you. How about this?
Spoiler alerts.
Yeah, spoiler alert. He wants to give us $1 billion extra in Tennessee for education. $1 billion. That's with a B. That's a lot of money.
Not really.
Exactly. Because do you know what it would take to raise wages in Knox County for our teachers?
I mean, probably a couple $100 million.
1% raise for just our certified teachers takes $3 million.
Right.
Now that's just in Knox County, and we are not the biggest system in the district in the state. That $1 billion couldn't even give a 1% raise.
Well,
to
it
every
doesn't matter.
teacher
I
in the
mean,
state.
but
like
I mean,
that's the reality of it. We need it sounds like a big number when he says it, $1 billion, but that's not going to make a big change.
I mean, our total budget is almost $1 billion here in town.
Exactly.
I mean,
and so $1 billion more at the state level is not going to. It's not.
And not even that, as you get into the BEP formula, which sadly I'm smarter than most on, is we're going to do a 3% raise again. Like we had this conversation last year, which we make we make that true on a county level, and school board looks like crap, and county commission and the mayor's office looks like crap when the state says 3%, but they only kick in their 1.5 or 1.25 or whatever it actually is, and we don't make up the other 2 and some change.
Well, and the thing is they're relying on the fact that we've so poorly educated everybody in math that they can't figure out the fact that 1% won't make 3%.
Well, see, I don't know. I think I'm trying to think of what level math you would need to do. You would need to be good at to actually understand the formula.
My husband is an engineer. He has sat down and figured it out for me. Because I sat there and my eyes were crossed trying to figure out how
but that's my
they
point. I think the general math that's good enough to live in the real world is not good enough to understand this thing.
No, and I mean, I run a business. I have done my own taxes. I'm capable of 99% of the time of hitting math correctly. By the way, I do want to correct your number. 1% of our student body in Knox County is actually only 600 students, not 6,000.
60. You're right. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I didn't want to jump in just then, but I do. Since we're
that's
talking
right.
about math corrections here, I want to make sure I hit that one. 'Cause I don't want people thinking we have quite that many homeless students.
No,
and to be honest, we probably have housing questionable closer to the 6,000 number.
Well, I mean, Knox County taught me math, so at the end of the day, this is Knox County's fault anyway. That's not true. I only did most of high school here. I was not in Tennessee for.
So in my case, Sevier County gets blamed for my education as far as public school. However, like I said, my grandmother taught at Fulton High School, and she did a lot of my supplementary work. My grandfather taught at the University of Tennessee. My great-grandmother was at South. And let's see, and schools that don't exist anymore that nobody remembers because it's my great-grandmother. However, she did teach Victor Ashe, which is like my great-grandmother's claim for all things. Whenever I would say anything about anything, well, I was smart enough to teach the mayor, so you should sit down and eat your vegetables. Well, I mean, I heard that a million times.
I don't know. I don't know. Okay, I won't pick that one apart. I'll leave that one alone because I'm not sure exactly how I want to make fun of that or not. But
well, it was always just one of those things of, if I'm smart enough to teach the mayor, I'm smart enough to teach you, and I can't give her too much grief because she was pretty smart.
Because going back to the part of the general funding conversation and how little $1 billion really is.
It's very little.
Is what it, like, I mean, I don't know. Like, it's one of those, like, I've had McPherson in here a couple of different times. Mm-hmm. I've had Jennifer Owen in here. She's better with the money than most of the other school board people that I've talked to and stuff like that.
She makes me feel so dumb sometimes.
Well, like, one of the things that drives me nuts, and I've asked Ron to put one together for me. I understand that I'm not important enough to build a specific spreadsheet for me, but, like, I don't think people really have a good grasp of dollars in to dollars out as far as county-wide goes, let alone schools go.
Right.
Where the money's actually going and stuff like that, because $600 million, which is more equivalent to the actual budget here, again, sounds like a ton of money.
Yeah.
But we have, 80-something schools?
Well, I mean, what we actually spend per child currently, according to the Fed, not according to the state, but the amount that Knox County spends per child is $9,000, right at a little over $9,000 a year.
Right, depending on which school you go to, that flexes or whatever, but on average, right.
Right, on average, I think we get
my school, and this was 2019, 2020 numbers. Mm-hmm. My school was $5,700 a kid.
Yeah, and well, here's the really shocking number. So $5,700, right? That's 180 days of care for your kid, right? Okay, 180 days in Knox County Jail. Guess how much they spend?
I'm sure it's significantly more.
$16,000 are invested on those 180 days in Knox County Jail, and that is not including the wages that they're paying to the people to keep them there and keep everything safe. That's not counting the health care and all that kind of stuff that they're providing.
Keep them, and then safe is a fun word too.
Well, yeah, and safe is a fun word. But when we're talking about giving them 3 meals a day and a place to live, and we've got kids that we're spending $6,000, literally $10,000 less for the same amount of duration, and we're supposed to be educating these people and turning them out. No wonder we're turning them out into Knox County Jail.
That's an interesting stat number. I like that. I'll have to keep that in mind.
It is distressingly pitiful, and we need to change that.
I'll have to think more about that because who spends that money? I'm confused.
That is the food that we're providing.
Right,
that is
but
the electricity. That is the things that we have to do to keep the jail going.
But the Knox County Sheriff's Office budget's like a third of the school budget. So who's paying that other money? So I'm confused.
Makes you wonder. But when I ask for numbers, and if you go to their website, they're all available. They're all publicly available. They have an average of how much we spend a day per inmate, and figure out 180 days, and that's where that magic 16,000 comes from. Because math,
right?
Multiplication,
I guess, but I don't know. I guess the question is where the different income sources are on that thing. All right. We could do this all day. I'm having a good time.
We could do this all day. And we do need to talk about income sources because I can't change. I cannot change federal standards. I cannot, as a board member, change federal income. The money that comes to us from the Fed directly. We also can't change the state requirements. We can't change the state money that comes to Knox County schools. But we can change a lot.
We can change. I feel like there's room because the formula doesn't do correctly. Because weren't we there was at least discussion of the major counties suing the state for funding shortages.
That was a big conversation, and then lots of other things have come up. So.
Because my understanding of it is as the formula goes, like I understand the general premise of of the BEP, the Knox counties and the Shelbys and the Davidson counties and stuff like that have a better income stream locally so that the state can kick in less to them. But I don't know, the whole thing doesn't make sense anyway. But
it is very wonky when you start looking at it.
The premise being Knox County is a donor county, so we collect more and get less back.
Right.
As far as the schools go, but the whole lawsuit thing, as I understood it, was that the formula is there and the state's sending even less than what the formula says they're supposed to send.
Right.
So there is opportunity for more income from the state. Like I made the joke to, what was it, Evity, excuse me, when she was in here. I was like, on the school board search, get us a lawyer.
Right.
You know, instead of getting a long-term teacher, which I understand the premise of why the superintendent being a teacher is important and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But let's get us a lawyer so they could just continuously sue the state until we get all of our money, and that'll make it. That'll at least cover his paycheck.
You know, have you
or hers,
interviewed anyone from the Knox County Law Department?
No, he won't answer my phone.
Yeah, you know, but yeah, there you go. There you go. Because there's a lot of people in this county who are like, well, we need to sue why is this legally allowed to happen? And it all comes back to the Knox County Law Department. So people really, I mean, yes, school board is important. Go out, vote for school board. Preferably, if you're in D7, vote for me. But when you're looking at politics, there are some people you really need to be paying attention to what's going on because they have control over everything. And right now, everybody wants to be mad about this mask lawsuit, for example. County Law Department has more decision making in that than the school board does. Right. School board has no control over what's going on with that at this point.
I think that's one of the unfortunate.
Has all of it.
I think that's one of the unfortunate, like clearly how little people know about how this is working. Is. You know, it's like
they want to get mad at teachers about it, and you're like, the teacher has nothing to do with it,
right? But I mean, even people getting mad at the school board about it. It's like at this point, the school board has nothing to do about it. You can get mad in past tense because the quote failures of the school board of the past is what got this to being the situation it is. But at this point, this is a judge and the law department's doing their thing, and that's the only thing that's going to fix it.
Absolutely, and so
fix it being an operative word depending on what you mean by fix it, but.
Getting educated about the law department, getting in there, getting yourself a good DA, the district attorney is an important person to have that can make a difference in how things go, both at the school level and at the jail level. You know, they control a lot of stuff that's going in and out of those things. You know, having the right people in the law department, having your right county commissioners. People have got to get educated on those topics because county commission has more to do with what's going on the school board than a lot of school board members. County commissions, where a lot of the funding
they sign the checkbook,
comes down. Right. If they tell us no, you can't have the money for the textbooks until June, we can't order them until June 15th when the check gets cut, which means they don't get ordered and they don't come in time for August.
Don't get me started on books. I don't want to start on books.
The books. I could go on about books for days.
The premise, and again, this is one of those things that I don't understand the math on. The premise to me that it is cheaper to get some of these crazy publishing companies that, again, it's a competition issue among many things. That it's cheaper to get books from them than create our own from whole cloth at this point.
Right.
In a state as big as Tennessee with enough budget that we could have a books department that all they do is create new books out of whole cloth. Makes more sense to me than what we're doing now. But that, again, this is the rut conversation. This is how we do it.
Fifth grade? 5th or 6th grade. I don't remember which year it was. During COVID, my sons were sent home their textbook for social studies, and it came home with a massive Discovery Channel logo across History Channel.
That's cool. Did we get it
logo across the front?
Do we get it as a discount because it's advertising?
I don't know, and that was my first question.
I mean, we are. I mean, Discovery's home office is here,
right? I was
so
like,
I feel like it would be.
If we get all their resources all of a sudden to teach in classrooms. Oh my goodness, head exploded. Like the social studies teacher in me, head literally exploded. I was like, the potential of the things we could do.
Did you hear about the Amazon classroom?
Oh, no.
Apparently Amazon did something with it. It's like this. It's a classroom and it's got like Amazon logos all over the wall and stuff like that. And it's pretty gross. I'll have to find it. It's making the story I heard it in is they're making fun of that whole we're building robots. That's what we're trying to build is robots because a good chunk of the curriculum was anti-union stuff.
Ah, interesting.
Since Amazon's not a big fan of union stuff.
Well, here in Knox County, we have been like talking about branding our parks and stuff. Maybe it's not too late to brand our classrooms.
I mean, again, like I think...
Not that I'm for that. I'm totally joking on that. I think branding classrooms would be absolutely disgusting. That's one of the reasons, in fact, I'm running as an independent, is the fact that when I started teaching, I had to sign a code of ethics that said that I would leave my political and religious and personal viewpoints at the door and provide a safe environment for children to develop their own based on their own upbringing and their exposure to general education. And I signed that code of ethics, and more importantly, like I have already said, 4th generation educator. All of my grandparents and grandparents and great-grandparents have done similar things. So we firmly believe that in my family. I honestly can't tell you what party any of my family would vote with. We talk about politics a lot, and the issues, but we don't talk about political affiliation because we aren't. We're teachers. Teachers are not necessarily politically affiliated because I have to go into a classroom 180 days of the year and leave my political affiliation outside.
Right.
And I seriously believe that. Children are who I am representing, and children don't have a political party. So I am firmly an independent. And that's why it's really hard when you're like, oh, you're a politician. I'm like, ooh,
right.
I don't
you
know,
are.
Seth. Not a politician.
You are.
Still
It's
an
too late.
educator first.
If you are running for a political office, you are a politician by definition. We could get a textbook out and probably look that up.
Yeah, I'm sure. It is still right.
Okay,
you're not wrong. It is the label I hate the most.
So as a trope or whatever you want to call it for all of my interviews that I'm doing for this political cycle, I have the 5 questions.
Excellent. I'm excited.
Which are going to get a little funky because you're an independent, but we'll get there in a second. Woo-hoo! So the first one's a real question. And I think we already answered it, but we'll let you do it in short chunk. Okay. Is this the first time running for office? If not, when and what? And is this going to be your last office you are seeking? Is there a future in politics for you?
Ooh.
Go.
So I have never run for public office before. I did do student government in college because I'm a big advocate for, speak up, for use your voice, use your vote. And at Maryville College, little bitty campus. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that 1,000 student population, but it means everybody has to be active and do lots of different things. So I was active in student government then, but since then, now the only thing I've done is serve for Madeline Rogero. Would I do more in the future? I will gladly step into public service, do things like serve on committees and help with textbook selection and things like that. I would love to do that. I would love to help to set our curriculum because there are some beautiful, beautiful materials out there that are just not being used because nobody's ever looked at them. Not
right.
because there's anything wrong with them, just nobody's ever looked. Doing things like, working with somebody like Discovery to utilize all their resources to use in a classroom would be amazing. That's the kind of connection I would love to see happen with the school system. Do I think I would ever run for further political office? Like I said, the idea of labeling myself as a politician is just distasteful to me. It would... in the current political climate, I can't imagine wanting to do this for any other reason than because nobody else better is out there, if that makes sense. Like, we need a good person to fill this role, somebody with experience, and I don't feel like anybody in the field has the kind of experience that I have. Thus, I'm running. I'm not doing it because it's something I want. I'm doing it because I am
obviously
needed.
The pay sucks, so
the pay super sucks, and I'm really okay with that. I'm definitely not doing it for the pay.
Which I think that's a broader philosophical conversation to have about the pay of some of these offices. Commission as well is it limits the field.
Yes.
There's probably lots of capable people that could do some really good work, but they can't live on the 16.5 or whatever it is a year that a commissioner or a school board member would make. Okay, number 2, also important question, favorite ice cream.
Oh, my favorite ice cream. Ooh, it's if we're talking from a grocery store, it's Bluebell. And right now, my favorite is probably the cherry. I think it's Cherry Jubilee is what they call it. It's super amazing. But my favorite to go is Brewster's. In fact, most people in my district already know this. They can find me at Brewster's with some level of regularity. I don't care if it's cold outside because they have this amazing brownie that's hot that then you can put any ice cream on top of, and they always have these crazy ice creams of the day that often have peanut butter in them, which makes life better, and then they put whipped cream on top of that, and so that is, yes, you can often find me getting really decadent with that in the Brewster's on Emory Road.
All right, so Brewster's, give me a call. We need to set up a sponsorship deal. That's a separate conversation.
There you go.
Number 3, what's your favorite local place to eat?
Ooh, other than Brewster's, right?
Yes.
Yeah, seriously. Let's see. So
that you would let your kid call a meal.
Okay, so my children's favorite place to eat in town is Jackie's Dream.
Okay.
If you've never been there, you have to go and get her chicken tenders with the Knox hot sauce on the side. And do you like spicy stuff? Okay, so the Knox hot is good, but then she has the hotter than hell.
I doubt it.
Oh,
all right, challenge accepted. Okay,
yeah,
I might have to go check it out.
So, how about this? We'll do this again.
Okay.
And we'll wing challenge this.
Okay. Have you seen Hot Ones on
yes,
YouTube?
I love Hot Ones.
It's a fun one.
I love Hot Ones.
It's a great premise. I'll go. Okay,
we'll
give it a shot.
You should do that with politicians. That would be great because, man, I'm telling you, hot food in your mouth and your mouth is burning, you're going to get honest real fast.
Yeah, or they get an excuse to quit.
Well, then, if they quit on Hot Ones, if they quit out of the challenge, then maybe you shouldn't vote for them.
Well, I'm just saying, they don't. I could have that good question on wing number 3, but they're like, it's too hot. I can't take it and leave.
Oh.
All right, number 4. I'm pretty sure you've already answered this one too. Do you feel like partisan elections help me, the voter?
I think partisan elections help in certain positions. School board, no, absolutely not. I think it's more important to actually get to know the experience that the person brings to the table. As far as school board is concerned, same thing with like judiciary. I do not want to know the party affiliation of my judge, because if he's that affiliated with a party, or she is that affiliated with a party, that disgusts me. They're supposed to be impartial. That's gross. So judges should be impartial. Now, some things like, senators, okay, I get that. That's fine. I still, I prefer to pick and choose my issues, if that makes sense.
No, totally. Absolutely makes sense. To me, it makes sense
because the ballot, because, sometimes you get somebody who's labeled a Republican and their issues are in line with, really liberal stuff. And then sometimes you get this somebody who's labeled a Democrat, like they've got right now in, New Mexico or whatever. And she's like way out in left field and very obviously a Republican. And everybody ends up mad because it's just a label. And that's the thing. We spend so much time labeling each other and not time getting to know each other. And I love that you do this, because you're getting to actually know people as opposed to just looking at their labels.
Appreciate it. I generally hate the labels. I think the labels are what is breaking, one of the many things that are breaking down what we live in, is because we're too concerned with team blue, team red, and it doesn't really matter what the actual issue is. It's just as, because
I had other people so badly. We want them. No, it's not me. You're somebody else. You're other than me. Right. You're not in my group. You're not cool.
Right. I had Gloria in here, and Gloria Johnson's in here, and she was talking about something that she introduced, or one of her colleagues introduced, to the state house or whatever, and it just gets ignored. Right. And then something near identical from a Republican gets introduced, and it runs through the system. And it's like, so it's not an issues thing. It's a who wrote it.
Yes.
And it's like, well, that's kind of stupid. And that's not what that's, if you're here to represent me, I want to know I want to fix issues. I don't care who came up with the right answer. So
absolutely.
All right. And so number 5 is a little funky, because you are running as an independent, because this is kind of obvious with what we've already talked about. So since you are running as an independent, normally this question is, you have your party, who's somebody from the other party that you're okay with, that you like, that you think does good work. And so since I've had a couple of independents now, which I really enjoy, because I prefer the independent thing, because like you said, but since you're an independent, you get a harder version of the question, which is you need to give me a Republican that you like, that does good work, whether it's local, state, or national, and a Democrat as well.
Ooh, okay. So I have several Republican fans, or that I'm a fan of. I will be honest. I have been really impressed with Senator Briggs. Huge fan of Dr. Briggs. He has really stepped out there and done some great stuff.
He's on my list of things to do. It's just he's not important because he's not running right now.
Yeah, he is.
Is he?
Yeah, he's running. He's running.
Right, fine, I got to hit him, but I got him later because he's okay.
I went to his kickoff and proudly masked up, one of the few masks in the room, and in fact, he singled me out because I was wearing a mask. And I was like, "Ooh, this was kind of like he
knows I'm real." Yeah,
he walked past the county mayor to talk to me. This is exciting. And I was not at the time declared running yet, so that was really impressive. He just wanted to talk to somebody in a mask. This is early on, but let's see. So I'm a huge fan of Briggs and have been a fan of Dr. Briggs for years. And honestly, I went to Larson Jay's kickoff as well, and I'm a Larson fan. Not saying that I they're both Republicans. They're good guys, and I've sat down with Larson and had really great conversations with him as a person, and was really impressed with where he stands as a person and some of the choices that he's made in his business and in his family.
I think Larson is one of those people you described earlier that is not fully set in the I'm on this team mindset. I
think these days, we talk about the aisle. I think the aisle has gotten really wide, and the teams have gotten really small. Right. And there's a lot of people who are now in the aisle and then on the edges of the aisle. And, I happen to be in the middle of that aisle. I declare myself as an independent in the middle of that aisle. But there's a lot of people, I think Larson's closer to, to being in the aisle than he is, fully in on team craziness. And that's the thing. Both sides have received this, we're going to go way out in left field and be crazy and way out in right field and be crazy. And if they were on a sports team, we would say, bench, you need to check your behavior and get back on the team.
Right.
And I think that's part of the problem.
All right. So that was some team right.
Yep. That's team right.
I need at least one team left to make it a valid answer.
On the left side, let's see. Let's go, since I went with a state person, let's go with a state person. I'm a fan of some of the stuff that Gloria's done. She's a teacher. And she really does advocate for kids. You know, I don't always agree with everything that she does. But to be honest, I think she's done a lot. She's tried to do a lot for kids. And you know, in the same way that our county mayor has done a lot for kids, I support anybody who puts kids first. And I mean, if you ever want to see, you know, Mayor Kane become a totally different human being, he all of a sudden goes from, you can watch him go from Kane the wrestler all the way down to this little bitty human being if you bring a child into the room. I got to go with him to the Muse kickoff. When the Muse opened its makerspace many moons ago.
All right, so whenever I do get him scheduled, I'll put my kids at the table.
You must have your children in the room. Oh my goodness, get him to read to a kid and he becomes a totally different person.
Tell you what,
it is wonderful. I love it.
One of the things that I've liked most, and it goes back to one of the things that you are a fan of, is the communication thing. I like his little Fridays thing.
Yeah.
I think I'll watch him or read the transcript of him more often than not, and it's, you know, okay, I don't think that's the right move or whatever,
right.
But at least I have a framework to get mad about instead of just sitting there going, well, I'm just mad at stuff.
Yeah, and so locally, let's see, I picked a county commissioner, so let me pick another, a county commissioner, so somebody else. I'm a huge fan of SEMA, and I'll be honest, I'm a fan of India Kincannon. I was a fan of hers when she was on the board of education.
My turn to play corrections, city. Just saying.
Right. You're
city.
right. SEMA is city. So yeah, but no, I'm a huge fan of India. Most of the time, she and we do have some places on some things that we disagree on, but you know.
I mean, I could count those as invalid answers technically because they're city races and they're by definition nonpartisan. But I'll allow it.
Yeah, but we
I'll
know
take
she's
it.
more.
I mean, we didn't need this crazy last year's city races
right
to be
left,
clear.
So I gave you right and left, not necessarily blue and red. Because
all right, she out technicality my technicalities.
Yeah,
fair enough.
I do tend to avoid the blue and the red identification. Like I said, I just don't like labels. It
doesn't help. I don't think it helps anybody. I have it's fun that, again, party to the show. It's fun that I speak to a lot of different people regularly. I've got both county party chairs that I talk to pretty regularly, just text back and forth about stuff.
That's got to be
and
interesting.
It's really
talking to both Herrera and Shears.
And it's really funny because they're exactly the same.
Yeah.
I mean, everything is this numbers game of this which precinct does what, where we're going to do better on this, issues that are we're going to highlight here and not highlight here kind of thing. It's I mean, again, you put it as a different version of the sports analogy, but it is. It is a game to them. It is this is
it's like Coke versus Pepsi.
Right.
Really.
Right. This is Yankees, Mets, over and over and over again.
Yes.
And
absolutely. And it's just a matter of what jersey color you choose to put on. And I'm sorry, I'm to the point I want to see the people. I don't want to see the jersey.
Right.
I want to see what you're going to do, what you have done. I want to know your experience. What have you really done with yourself before you ran for office, since you've been in office, and what you want to do in the future? Though I know that a lot of times politicians, what they want to do and what they can do are very different. There's a lot of people running for stuff that make promises that that office won't even fulfill. And I get a lot of questions. Oh, the first time I went out and was trying to meet constituents after I had decided that I was going to run, I was like, I'd gotten the advice that you should go out and meet some people and talk to them before you announce any type of a platform or anything. I was like, okay, I can do this. So I go out. I'm like, hi, I'm Dominique Oakley. I'm running for school board in your district, and I'm interested in talking to you. What's important about schools and what would mean something to you? And this guy looks at me and he goes, I just need to know one thing. Okay, he goes, how do you feel about guns in schools? Or how do you feel about guns? And I was like, I'm running for school board. And he goes, okay, how do you feel about guns in schools? And I said, okay, well, I'm anti-guns in schools. I'm all for controlling guns in schools because I don't think that's very safe. And he stopped. He goes, okay. And then he goes, what about abortion? I said, well, I'm not for abortions in schools either. And he stopped. He goes, all right, well, come on in. Let's talk. And we sat and had a great conversation for the next half an hour. But I was not prepared when I walked to that door to be asked, what about guns? What about abortion? Because those are two things that don't happen in schools. They shouldn't, at least, you know, under my viewpoint. So they're completely outside my purview as a school board member. But that's what he wanted to know. And he and I got to talking, and he was like, I've talked to people before, and they promised me that these things are going to change, and they never change. And I'm like, well, if you're asking school board members to change rules about gun control or abortion, you're probably asking the wrong people.
Well, but they're all the same people then.
Well,
There's
a lot of truth in that.
The label you don't like a politician,
right?
They're all the same people.
Well, and that's why
it doesn't matter what office, if you're a trustee, right? Trustee or mayor are the same
my
thing.
Constituents, that has been the first, and that was the thing. He and I sat and had a long conversation, and I educated him as to what I could and couldn't do, and more importantly, who he needed to speak to about those issues. And I left his door with him having a lot more information as to who he needed to call, and I feel a little bad for the people that I gave him the phone numbers of, because I'm guaranteeing you that man called him because he was hot.
Right.
He was hot under the collar. But that's the thing. We don't do enough education. And that really, even if I don't get elected, that's all I care about is let's get people educated. Let's get our kids educated. Let's improve our education system as a whole.
Right.
And I think the only way we're going to do that is by talking about it.
Right, because I think that idea that I don't know what a school board member can do,
right,
or should do, or it's in their wheelhouse, or whether this is a commission issue, or this is the mayor's office issue, or if this is a state level.
Right.
Like we could go, go walk the line at school pickup one day and just ask a bunch of parents, who's the mayor?
Right.
Who's the mayor? Who's the mayor? Who's the mayor? Like 4 or 5 just blatantly simple questions. I would say that more fail than pass.
The simple question of what does it take to be on the ballot?
Right.
Is so complicated that I've had to double check at least twice. Like I've called the election commission twice to make sure I've met all the requirements, kind of thing, before actually taking all of my stuff in to make sure everything was done. And then there was
it's like getting
when
your
I get
driver's
there
license,
and turn
like
everything
else.
in, I still had to wait for them to call me back an hour later and make sure it was still all okay.
Right.
Which, man, that was a phone call I really enjoyed.
And I'm sure at this point that office is not a fun place to be at, given the craziness of this ballot specifically. But
honestly, they're wonderful.
Chris Davis is my favorite, one of my favorite guests I've had in here. Chris is awesome, but
they're wonderful. Yolanda is a personal favorite down there. If you haven't spoken to Yolanda, you need to call and just talk to Yolanda because she's great.
Okay,
she's just.
But
so
I mean,
wonderful.
like, I just the amount of ballots and amount of people running and all of that stuff that office is playing with right now has got to be rough.
Absolutely. I have gotten on a. Well, I can do a shout out to Officer Cunningham, who works the door down there. He is the security, one of the security guys. But Officer Cunningham is regularly there when I go through, and he knows me at this point because I'm the one that always has the wacky stuff in her bag. And I know he's a coin collector these days because my son had coins for me to take to the bank in my bag yesterday, and I've been down there so many times that Officer Cunningham and I know each other. To give you some idea, I mean, and that's being educated about civics as a teacher and interested and running. It still has taken multiple trips because it's complicated.
Right, it goes to the small business thing too. I can't.
Yes.
I get like every time we've had any major thing to do, it's 5-6 trips in a city county building.
Absolutely.
Maybe a trip to the police department for some other stuff, and then back to city county building to turn in the paperwork that I got from the police department.
Have you had to go through the building commission at all?
No, we don't build stuff.
Oh, goodness gracious!
I got in trouble with inspections once, but that was because I moved a wall that didn't have any.
How dare you move walls?
I know.
You can't be. I know. I had to put up a wall at one point, and that was super exciting. Adding a wall is in fact the end of the universe.
Well, and it's
you have to bring in every spaceship ever to get it done.
One of our buildings that we lease is the landlord has been trying to put a new front on the building for 5 years,
and that shouldn't be that complicated.
And it's an old building, and it's in some floodplain something, and that's a big freaking deal. And
floodplain makes
and I've got stuff that I'm waiting on doing because when we sign the lease, he's like, within a certain amount of time, I'm going to get this building front done. Yeah. And so I was like, I'm not going to spend $5-10 grand on stuff to put on the front of the building because you're going to tear it off.
Right.
And now we're a year and a half in, and he's still trying to get the city to get approval.
Well, floodplain stuff is a personal hot button issue for you. You're really going to love Lee's speech last night because he decided to use Waverly as an example, and he has committed. We'll see if it matters, but he has committed to, money to, I'm not sure it's nearly enough money, but he's committed money to making sure there's no schools in floodplains in the state of Tennessee.
That's stupid.
Yep.
That's really
not yep, it's stupid. Yep, it's not going to be enough money.
Well, it's stupid too, but I mean, this is Tennessee. We've got valleys and hills and all sorts of
We do.
stuff. I
We do.
mean, unless every school is on top of a hill, it's
Right.
It's going to be somewhere in that. All right, we ran long. I appreciate it.
Yes, anytime.
Do your plugs. Plug it up.
So if you want to find me, you can find me at votedominique.com. That's VOTEDOMINIQUE.
Yeah, well, people with their weird names. Guys
I
spell
know.
weird names.
Sorry.
It's not really a weird name.
I
But
wanted to have votedom.com, and don't go to that. Well, I mean, you can go to that page and tell that lovely British guy that seriously you should let her buy it from you. He has a cute little blog. It's a Brit. I don't even know why he's votedom.com.
why is it vote? That doesn't make
I
sense.
have no clue.
Okay, I'll put it in the show notes so you guys don't have to worry about spelling it.
Thank you. That'd be great. You can also find me on Facebook. I'm very active on Facebook. The young whippersnappers, including my son, are trying to get me more on the doing Insta and Twitter. So I'm working on that. I'm learning. It's not something I ever thought I would learn because teachers aren't really supposed to have a whole lot of social media presence. So I'm working on it. And let's see. You can find me on Tuesdays, starting next week. You'll be able to find me at Mahalo Coffee on Tuesdays
Trevor
from
Bain's
11
place.
to 1. Yes.
That's right. That is quarter mile from my place up there.
Yes, I am very excited to be there from 11 to 1 on Tuesdays. You check the Facebook page for the exact, because we're going to switch every other Tuesday. So, because they've got something else that goes on too. So we'll be there every other Tuesday, and we're going to have more events and announcing as we go, because we want to be very active. That's something I got the luxury when I first started teaching of working in a district where the school board members for years had an open policy of once a week two members, and they would announce each week who the two members were going to be, would be at like a coffee shop or
Right.
a restaurant or something, someplace public, and they'd be there for a couple hours, and anybody could drop in and talk to them. It was, it was announced on their calendar, and it was just a thing, and they did it every week, and it was wonderful. Teachers would drop in, students would drop in, parents would drop in, the media sometimes was there. Sometimes you'd be there and you'd be the only person, and you'd have two school board members to talk to. And as a teacher, that was enormous, especially in the summers. So that's something that I'm going to go ahead and start doing now as part of my campaign. And as if I am lucky enough to get elected by my lovely constituents, then it's something I'm going to continue to do, because I think that's a place where we really could open up communication more between ourselves and and our representatives being available more often.
Yeah, I mean, I like that, and it's I might have to talk to Trevor, see if I can get him on the phone, because I've been floating the idea of doing some debates, and all my friends that I know that have restaurants or bars or anything like that are like, no politics in my place. No, thank you.
Yeah, no, they so far they have been very receptive. Tuesdays are kind of a dead spot for them.
Right.
So it's a good time for me to be there anyway. And in my case, it's right there near Bricky McLeod.
And it's right across the street from Brewster's, and you're good.
And it's right across the street from
Let's
Brewster's.
be real about
So
what's going on.
let's be real. I'm gonna go do my 2 hours at Mahalo, and then I'll be going across the street to Brewster's. So there you go.
For
Brewster's,
peanut
you really should
butter
call
brownie
him
something.
at this point. Yes, you need to, and you need to just start having the peanut butter on the menu on Tuesdays. Just sometimes they rotate it off, and I get very, very sad.
Very sad. Okay.
Very sad.
Well, that was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yay! More shows. I love doing shows, and I love having fun guests that are fun to talk to. So that was Dominique Oakley, School Board District 7. Like I said, I'll put some links to her contacts and stuff in the show notes for you guys. We're almost in agreement at gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. You can go to our website, almostinagreement.com. I'm working on my jobs description sheet because I think it's important that we know what the people are supposed to do or capable of doing inside the job, not just... I don't know why they're all politicians. Just vote for the one that has the R or the D next to the name and get it over with. We have this is a huge ballot coming up, so there's going to be a lot more interviews coming in for that. So stay tuned. I've got 5 more this week, and I've already got like 6 scheduled next week. So I'm going to do my best to get everybody possible and at least have one show with everybody. Once we get through primaries, we'll follow back up and do some more. But I don't know. That's it. That's the show. Stay tuned.